Welcome back. In this session, we will discuss primary sources of information. Sources of information are often considered primary, secondary or tertiary depending on their originality and proximity of when it was created. The primary source of information are basic sources of new information which are not passed through any filtering mechanism like condensation, interpretation or evaluation. The documents in which such information is published are known as primary sources. Such information is not available in secondary sources. They are the first published records of original research and developments that have not been altered or distorted in any way. They exist of their own and usually contain original information on the first formulation of any new observation, experiment, ideas, etc. They are the resources in which the author for the first time supplies evidence, describes a discovery, makes or derives a new proposition or brings forward new evidence about previous proposition. It is a fundamental authoritative document related to a subject of inquiry used in the preparation of a later derivative work. UNESCO defines a primary source as original scientific paper describing new research techniques or apparatus. Primary does not mean superior. It refers to the creation by the primary players and is distinguished from a secondary source, which is a historical work like a scholarly book or article built up from primary sources. The significances of primary sources are as follows. A subject becomes a discipline in its own right when independent primary sources begin to be produced in that area. The progress and development of a country directly depend on the primary literature that reports a new discovery. The information published in primary sources is newly generated, recent, current, full and up to date for all other investigators working in the same field. When any research or investigation or any concept is first published in primary sources, only it becomes the basic and original source of communication of information and reports quickly to be used by other users. Publication of primary sources of information avoids duplication in the research, thus saves time, money and labor to be spent on it. It also acts as a guide to the researcher engaged in the same field by pointing out what has been done and up to what level, etc. The primary source of information help in the compilation of secondary and tertiary sources of information. Often, primary sources of information may be the only source of information in existence. There are certain primary sources of information which remain unpublished. Very often, these may be consulted for historical interest. Such materials include laboratory notebook, memoranda, diaries, letters to and from a particular individual, company, etc. Primary sources may also be in other forms including interviews, recordings, paintings or even computer software, email correspondence and web pages. Examples of primary sources include periodicals, research or technical reports, conference proceedings, patents, standards, theses and dissertations, research reports, trade literature, laboratory notebooks, official publications, correspondence, personal files, personal papers, letters, both personal and business, diaries and journals, both personal and business, photographs and paintings, sketches, original maps, etc. Advertisements, posters and banners, memoirs, genealogy records, both personal or family and from public records, news footage, newsreels, videotapes or audio tapes, etc. Newspaper articles written at time of the event, oral histories, minutes of meetings related to the event, vital records, birth and death records, census records, code records, tax records, property records, church registers or other public and private records, material artifacts, physical objects or evidence related to the event including articles of clothing, furnishings, coins, stamps, buildings, tools, weapons, etc. Creative works such as novels, essays, poetry, music, art and audio or video recordings, more recently computer software, email archives, web documents, etc. and many additional types of similar materials. Primary sources are characterized by their content regardless of whether they are available in original format, in microfilm or microfiche, in digital format or in published format. Primary periodicals. A periodical is anything that comes out with regular issues. A daily newspaper, a weekly news magazine, a monthly journal and annual book series are all examples of periodicals. Many periodicals are written for a general audience whose readers are not expected to have specialized knowledge or training. However, probably even more periodicals are written for specialists and have articles that are difficult for readers who lack that background. These periodicals written for a scholarly audience are called journals. Scientific periodicals are still the most important source of information for science. A periodical generally contains more than one article. Two major types of periodicals are 1. Journals of learned societies and professional institutions. 2. Journals issued by commercial publishers through normal channels. In addition, there are two minor types. These are house journals issued by firms to promote good relations with staff and customers, and controlled circulation journals often containing essentially trade catalogue material and issued free. Reports. A report or account is any informational work made with specific intention of relaying information or recounting certain events in a widely presentable form. Written reports are documents which present focused, salient content to a specific audience. Reports are often used to display the result of an experiment, investigation or inquiry. The audience may be public or private, an individual or the public in general. Reports are used in government, business, education, science and other fields. Reports use features such as graphics, images, voice or specialized vocabulary in order to persuade that specific audience to undertake an action. Some examples of reports are scientific reports, recommendation reports, white papers, annual reports, auditors reports, workplace reports, census reports, trip reports, progress reports, investigative reports, budget reports, policy reports, demographic reports, credit reports, appraisal reports, inspection reports, military reports, bound reports, etc. Reports are a very useful method for keeping track of important information. The information contained in reports can be used to make very important decisions that affect our lives daily. Patents. A patent is a right granted by a sovereign state to the owner of an invention for a limited period of time in exchange for detailed public disclosure of the invention that prevents other forms of making, using, importing or selling the invention without his permission. Patents are a form of intellectual property. A patentable invention can be a product or a process that gives a new technical solution to a problem. It can also be a method of doing things, the composition of a new product, or a technical improvement on how certain objects work. In modern usage, the term patent usually refers to the right granted to anyone who invents any new, useful or non-obvious process, machine, article of manufacture or composition of matter. Some other types of intellectual property rights are also called patents in some jurisdictions. Industrial design rights are called design patents, plant breeders' rights are sometimes called plant patents, and utility models are sometimes called petty patents or innovation patents. The procedure for granting patents, requirements placed on the patentee and extent of the exclusive rights vary widely between countries according to national laws and international agreements. Typically, however, a granted patent application must include one or more claims that define the invention. A patent may include many claims, each of which defines a specific property right. The exclusive right granted to a patentee in most countries is the right to prevent others or at least to try to prevent others from commercially making, using, selling, importing or distributing a patented invention without permission. Under the World Trade Organization's Agreement on Trade-related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, patents should be available in WTO member states for any invention in all fields of technology, and the term of protection available should be a minimum of 20 years. Nevertheless, there are variations on what is patentable subject matter from country to country. Standards. A standard is a document that provides requirements, specifications, guidelines or characteristics that can be used consistently to ensure that materials, products, processes and services are fit for their purpose. Standards are unit or measures in terms of weight, size, lengths, qualities, composition, process of production, etc., established by national and international organizations. Standards are finalized after thorough testing, research and study. The importance of standards in any industrial community is well known. To sustain the complicated mechanism of preparation, agreement and observance of standard practices in the various industrial and manufacturing processes, methods, measurements, terminologies, etc., there is need for a different type of information services. The standards are the best sources for such information. In non-industrial areas also, unification of practices through standards is being gradually attained. All standards are usually listed in the standardizing body's handbook, or list and selected standards are also noticed or reviewed in technical journals. Standards are also noticed in national and subject bibliographies. The information content of standards varies according to the nature of them. Some standard prescribes only the accepted quality or performance value of products. Example, fountain pen ink, electric cable, laboratory wares. Similarly, there are standard on test methods, weight, mass, practices and on technical terminology. The information content will naturally vary in all these standards. Specifications. A specification is a detailed, exact statement of particulars, especially a statement prescribing materials, dimensions and quality of work for something to be built, installed or manufactured. It is an explicit set of requirements to be satisfied by a material, product or service. The technical specification may be developed privately, for example, by a corporation, regulatory body, or it may be developed by standard organization, which often have most diverse input and usually develop voluntary standards. The word specification merely refers to the act of to state explicitly or in detail or to be specific. A specification may refer to a type of technical standard. An in-service or maintained as specification specifies the condition of a system or object after years of operation, including the effects of wear and maintenance. Specifications may also refer to technical standards, which may be developed by any various kinds of organizations, both public and private. Example, organization types include a corporation, a consortium, a trade association, a national government, including its military, regulatory agencies and national laboratories and institutes, a professional association, a purpose-made standards organization such as ISO, or vendor-neutral developed generic requirements. Thesis and dissertations. A thesis or dissertation is a scholarly document submitted in support of candidature for an academic degree or professional qualification, presenting the author's research and findings. In some contexts, the word thesis or a cognate is used for part of a bachelor's or master's course, while dissertation is normally applied to a doctorate, while in other contexts the reverse is true. The term graduate thesis is sometimes used to refer to both master's thesis and doctoral dissertations. Dissertations and thesis may be considered to be grey literature. The required complexity and or quality of research of a thesis or dissertation can vary by country, university or program. Therefore, The required minimum study period may vary significantly in duration. Laboratory notebooks. A laboratory notebook is a primary record of research. Researchers use a lab notebook to document their hypotheses, experiments, and initial analysis or interpretation of experiments. The notebook serves as an organizational tool, a memory aid, and can also have a role in protecting any intellectual property that comes from the research. The guidelines for lab notebooks vary widely between institution and between individual labs, but some guidelines are fairly common. The lab notebook is typically permanently bound and pages are numbered. The lab notebook is usually written as the experiments progress rather than at a later date. In many laboratories, it is the original place of record of data as well as any observations or insights. For data recorded by other means, the lab notebook will record that the data was obtained and the identification of the data set will be given in the notebook. Many adhere to the concept that a lab notebook should be thought of as a diary of activities that are described in sufficient detail to allow another scientist to replicate the steps. In laboratories with several staff and a common laboratory notebook, entries in the notebook are signed by those making them. Memorandum. A memorandum is an informal written brief, note, record, reminder or summary used as a means of communication or to outline the terms of an agreement in its draft stage. A memorandum can have only a certain number of formats. It may have a format specific to an office or institution. In law specifically, a memorandum is a record of the terms of a transaction or contract, such as a policy memo, memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreement, or memorandum of association. Alternative formats include memos, briefing notes, reports, letters, or binders. They could be one page long or many. They may be considered as grey literature. Minutes of meetings. Minutes, also known as protocols or informally notes, are the instant written record of a meeting or hearing. They typically describe the events of the meeting, starting with a list of attendees, a statement of the issues considered by the participants, and related responses or decisions for the issues. Minutes may be created during the meeting by a typist or reporter who may use shorthand notation and then prepare the minutes and issue them to the participants afterwards. Alternatively, the meeting can be audio recorded, video recorded, or groups appointed or informally assigned secretary may take notes, with minutes prepared later. Many government agencies use minutes recording software to record and prepare all minutes in real time. Sources of information are often considered primary, secondary, or tertiary depending on their originality and proximity of when it was created. Primary sources are original materials. They are from the time period involved and have not been filtered through interpretation or evaluation. They are original materials on which other research is based. They are usually the first formal appearance of results in physical, print, or electronic format. They present original thinking, report a discovery, or share new information. Now, let us try to answer the following questions. What is a primary source of information? What is a patent? What is a specification? What is report? What is a memorandum? Here are some references for your further reading. Information Sources and Services, PSG Kumar, BR Publishing Corporation, Delhi. www.loc.gov/teachers/using-primary-sources/mla.html. http://guides.library.ucsc.edu/primary-secondary. Hope the session on primary sources was useful for you. See you next time. Until then, bye.